Warning: the following video contains explicit language which may be offensive to some viewers or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
Hello and welcome to this video. Today's video is kind of a filler video. The wife has been sick all week and I haven't actually had the energy to work on the Dune sci-fi miniseries for Dune and Children of Dune. So yes, I am kind of procrastinating / just haven't had the energy to do it. So that's that. So what I'm going to talk about with today is the illustrious works of one of my favorite sci-fi authors, Philip K. Dick. He has had a lot of his stories made into movies, or inspired by movies, or they used elements from his books in movies. Examples: Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep was the elemental background for Ridley Scott's Blade Runner, 1981. They used elements, they used some of the names, and kind of very loosely based it on Philip K. Dick's novel. Both the novel and the movie are great. They're great. They're good stories, and you shouldn't expect them to be the same. They have similar themes, similar ideas. However, they do have a lot of variation between the source material and the novel. Another one of his stories, it's a short story, is made into two different films actually, and that is the We Will Remember It For You Wholesale. It was made into a movie called Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I don't remember what year right offhand. Then they did a remake of it, and I'm not sure what year it came out. I just know it, in my opinion, wasn't very good. The Schwarzenegger Total Recall debuted an actress by the name of Sharon Stone. And those just kind of used elements from that story. They didn't, go real. They played fast and loose with the story elements. Another one that they did, and they did a pretty good job with it, except they kept the overall theme, and that's Minority Report. The actual story that it's based on takes place over a period of about 2 hours. Whereas in the movie, it takes place over a larger time period. A lot of things are changed, but they do a good job on keeping the theme of the story intact. I believe Tom Cruise was in that one. Then the one they probably did the best that they could do for Hollywood was Paycheck with Ben Affleck and Uma Thurman. That deviated significantly from the book. However, they did keep a whole bunch of the plot elements, what was going on. They updated it from when Dick originally wrote the book for more at that time, at the time that the movie was made, modern and futuristic computer tech and all that good stuff. Now there's an indie movie, based on his novel Radio Free Abolsmouth. That is a really good, almost beat for beat interpretation of Philip K. Dick's story. They did a really good job. And of those ones I mentioned, I think I like probably Blade Runner the most. Blade Runner, I've seen it. I watch it probably 3-4 times a year since probably 1984, 1985, I want to say, is when it came out on VHS. And I wore out the VHS tape of Blade Runner. Actually, in my life, I've before the advent of DVD and Blu-ray and all those better ones streaming, I probably wore out, I know, at least 2 VHS tapes I wore out, and at least one that that I had at the time that DVDs were becoming inexpensive and you were getting a lot of the older titles on DVD. I had a VH copy when all that started coming around, and I think it was just about wore out when I picked up the DVD. I've got it on DVD and I've got it on Blu-ray. I've got the final cut on DVD and Blu-ray. Sorry about that. I had to pause the video for a second. Or pause the recording of the video for a second. So there's probably just had a really interesting jump cut. So the Philip K. Dick, going back to him, Philip K. Dick is a very intriguing writer. His writing style is very, I'm not really sure how to describe it, but Philip K. Dick gives you just enough information in his stories to kick off your imagination. that's the reason why a lot of his books deviate so far from the source material to a movie. Even the I believe it was HBO did the Man in the High Castle series. It may have been Netflix, but because of the way it's written, the way he writes, whoever wrote the screenplay for the movies and the TV series and what have you was all their interpretation of his books, or the source material. The problem with that is I can read, say, Philip K. Dick's really controversial and really good novel, The Transmigration of Timothy Archer. I can read it, and somebody else at a different point in their life, different experiences growing up, can read that exact same novel and have a completely different interpretation of it, because that's how Philip K. Dick wrote. That's just how he put everything together, how immersive he was. Not really immersive. He was breadcrumbs. He'd throw the breadcrumbs and you would follow them based on what direction you would naturally go. In fact, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? I've read it, I don't know, a bunch of times. And a friend of mine several years ago had read it and had a different take on the story than I did, because his experiences growing up, his experiences, life experiences were different. So when his brain filled things in, it filled him in based on his life experiences and his way of thinking, his way of putting things together. So that's just one of the reasons why I really enjoy his writing, and I love discussing his writing because of that. And it's one of those things that Philip K. Dick did well in his books. Unfortunately, he died in late 1980, I think, or early 1981. I think it was 1981, because it was shortly before Blade Runner was released. He had viewed the rough cut of Blade Runner and was just super happy with it. He was enthralled with it. He said that Ridley Scott had captured, the essence of the story, but died before its actual premiere, before it got edited and all the stuff that the studios do, reshoots and all that good stuff. So, in general, he approved of the movie. It is a wild story. A lot of his stories are wild. A lot of them didn't age real well. I'm going to tell you right now, trigger warning. If you go to read anything by Philip K. Dick, a lot of his really good works were written in the mid to late 60s through about the early to mid 70s. They didn't age well. Didn't age real well. They just, if you take a lot of today's values and try to impose them on a Philip K. Dick novel or short story, you're going to have issues because they just didn't age well. The norms, things that were accepted at that day and in his day and age when he wrote those are no longer accepted. And some of the stuff when he wrote them were kind of cringy. In fact, my favorite novel that Dick wrote is Flow My Tears, the Policeman Said. And that did not age. There are portions of that book that were kind of creepy coming out when they came out, and are even more so now, and did not age. It aged poorly. But the heart and soul of it is a good science fiction thought exercise. There may be some spoilers from here on through for this title, so you're warned. So, you know, if you don't want it to be spoiled, you want to read it before you finish this video, go do that. I will advise you now to do that. Okay, you're still here. So the premise of the book is you have an elite society. You have society in general. You have an elite society that have been genetically modified or engineered or grown or whatever, to have higher stamina, to quote quote look good, longer lifespans. The main character in the story is in his late 60s, early 70s, but he's in the health of somebody of about 30 to 35 years old. He's a talk show host. If you read the book, and if you're old enough to remember Johnny Carson, on Late Night with Johnny Carson, that style of talk show, he had people on, interviewed, did monologues, you know, the whole thing. And he enjoyed sex. Lots and lots of sex with lots and lots of partners. So then we go through the story, we get introduced, it builds him up. Then at some point, he gets a call from an estranged lover that is not real happy with him, and basically throws a alien species to try to kill him. An alien plant, sentient plant thing that basically dissolves your insides. Just try to keep, you know, the algorithm from freaking out. And while in the process of doing this, it fills you full of hallucinatory fluid, basically drugs, but they're natural fluids for this particular creature. And he wakes up in a hospital. He wakes up, not only does he wake up in a hospital, he wakes up in a world that is, he never existed in. That is very much not the world that he remembers. You have massive civil unrest. You have corruption in law enforcement. You have student protests against the government. And you have, basically you have the, and where he wakes up, you have the haves and have-nots. And because there's no record of his existence in this world, he's a have-not. He goes from being a popular TV show host to a nobody. And through his adventures in this world, he has sex with a 16-year-old girl. He has sex with multiple other partners, does drugs, does a little bit of murdering, then gets wounded severely, then wakes up in a hospital. And when he wakes up in this hospital, it's the world that he remembers. And it never answers the question, was this a hallucination? Everything he went through, was it a hallucination because of this creature he was attacked with? Or was it real and he somehow transported to a different, parallel universe? And like I said earlier, the way Philip K. Dick writes, it's interesting. It's your views, your life experiences, how you interpret things like the Mandela effect, multiverse stuff, are all going to, the way it's written, it's going to come into play. You may view it different than I do. I tend to look at it as it was an actual dimensional slip. That's the way I see it. And I've talked to people that have read it probably as many times as I have, that view it as an hallucination brought on by the drugs. It's kind of like the ending of the movie Inception. You really don't know. It leaves it up to you to make that call. Another really good book that he did was Clans of the Alpine Moon. And like the first two chapters, our main antagonist, his ex-wife tries to kill him. Well, his wife files for divorce, tries to kill him, and manages to get him exiled off Earth. So yeah, it's, and the planet he winds up on has basically these tribal warring factions. And it goes through the interactions with him basically coming in and negotiating peace between all these different clans. And what you find out at the end of the book is each one of these clans are made up members of a particular type of neurodivergence. I can't pull off the top of my head real quick all the different things you have like autism, megalomania, just to name a couple, and sociopaths, multiple personality disorder, and you have all of these things, and basically he's the harbinger of peace. He brings all these groups together and falls in love and all this good stuff. It's a really good book. So yeah, Philip K. Dick is one of those writers that I could probably make a 900-hour video and still not cover everything about him. He spent most of his latter years in life basically in self-exile in France, because of his own mental illness. He was xenophobic and agoraphobic paranoid, which people believe, different things I've read, believe a lot of that was brought on by a very young, very naive mental health treatments of the time, of starting in probably the early 60s through his death. They were giving him things like codeine and hydrocodone, to treat things like headaches and not being able to sleep and long-term use. I mean, those weren't the only two drugs he was given. At some point, I believe it was LSD, peripheral of different painkillers, and yeah, he probably had a prescriptions, if he so chose, which thankfully he didn't, to be one hell of a successful drug dealer. Yeah. So yeah, I would strongly recommend checking out Philip K. Dick's works, keeping in mind that you can't, if you try to put the values of modern day America on these novels, it's going to be triggering. So until next time, everyone, take care, be good humans, peace.
Hey, it's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?